So good morning, folks. I'm Barb Smith from LDC, Director of Partnerships and Professional Development. My co-facilitator for this adventure is Kimba Rael. Many of you know her from Colorado. Kimba is just coming back from laryngitis, so you'll hear more of me and read more of Kimba today. Also joining us is Barbara Brown, who's leading a large implementation, our work with the federal I-3 grant in New York City. So she's doing a lot of the same work you are in a highly virtual, highly blended PD model. I want to say welcome to this group. This is like an esteemed group to get started with this vision of coaching in Kentucky. Here's what you can expect today. We are going to do a little setup, a little bit of this, like the first day of class, a little bit of here's where we're going with coaching, here's what you signed on for, here's what it's going to look like. We also want to, number 3, paint a little bit of a different picture of LDC than those of you who were introduced to it 4 or 5 years ago may have experienced. Kind of look at, I tell people, it's not your mama's LDC anymore. So we want to do some big picture stuff. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the platforms you're using, this coach experience in coach certification itself, and then we're going to do some work together. We're going to do some work linking standards, an LDC task, and student evidence, and it's something that you can turn around and use and play around with in your mind over the next couple weeks. And then we'll get into next steps for next week. Since we have weekly sync up time on Friday mornings and then independent work in between. So that's kind of our 1 hour this morning. I am thrilled to just hear from Robin and the team that there's tremendous interest in networking networks in Kentucky. Over 38% of educators in Kentucky have a Core Tools account. And to me, it's not about Core Tools. It's actually even not about using LDC. It's about improving literacy instruction. So you folks are the pioneers in getting national LDC certification. And what that certification will do is it will strengthen your skills as a virtual coach, because we will be doing a lot of virtual work. It'll get you to develop some new tricks and skills and moves in that arena. It'll help you bring that into a combination of face-to-face and online work. But also, it will strengthen your ability if you were going to go be a UBD trainer or to go work with differentiation. LDC is classic backwards design, work with formative assessment. So as we think about this work, the goal is to reach as many of these 38% of educators and more in Kentucky to have impact in classrooms. I know that Robin has expressed this vision of how could we network the great things that are happening across rural, suburban, and small cities so that everybody has access to expertise. And you already have a high level of expertise, and what we're going to do is help you hone those skills over the next few months. You're going to, I'm really going to ask you to have 2 hats. Or as in the military, they call it double-hatted. You're going to be double-hatted in this process. Your time between our virtual sessions will especially be dedicated to the learner role. We want to refresh and deepen your content knowledge of LDC because it's evolved. Our understanding of how to develop a task that's truly standards-driven versus having a whiff of the standard has really improved. Our ability to situate LDC in the larger school system instead of, hey, let's go make modules, has really improved. So we want you to focus on what are you learning, especially this first 7 weeks. How does this fit with what you already know? Take this time for yourself. And then the other hat you're wearing is one as a leader. How can I use this? How can I apply this? What could I what did I learn this week that I could monkey around with as I'm visiting a school or working with a grade level in my school district? So it's about yourself and others. This is not a train the trainer. I want to be super clear about that, because we are going to go at an aggressive pace and we're going to go deep. I expect you to have some productive struggle, lots of camaraderie, and really have a high-level professional learning community. We are going to learn by doing and practice to practice. Sometimes I'll call out our moves, like Kimba was nicely this morning prompting people to show their faces. One of the reasons we do that is because we find that virtual communities can be ghost towns, just like face-to-face grade level meetings. But the advantage in face-to-face grade level meetings is everybody is there. So how do you create virtual lively communities? One of the things we've learned is going with video seems to make a real difference in people feeling connected. So there'll be little tricks of the trade throughout this that you can begin to integrate into your own work. So again, learner and leader, not a train the trainer. We're going to learn by doing. We're going to do lots of practicing our own practice. And I hope that you'll play around and have fun with this. We've already had the busting on Kelly Stidham this morning. And I expect that all of that will continue. I have to say that we are just thrilled to be a part of this with you. There's such wonderful foundation in Kentucky with the Common Core. There's such leadership within the state. And this idea of the coach credentialing is really based on how could we more systematically equip a core of people who can really work, have the resources and tools to expand their impact. So certainly the right people are on the bus. Our theory of action around this is if you really want to make a difference in student achievement, you have to backtrack and think about what are the skills teachers need to develop. And that it's not a feel-good kind of exercise. We've all been to the workshops where, hey, that was great, but what did it really do for us? A lot of money is spent on professional development without a lot of real results. So one of the things you're going to be experiencing and that we're trying to enact is this idea of micro-credentialing, using badges, using artifacts. A teaching task is evidence of teacher planning. Student work is evidence of what the students are learning. We want to use these artifacts to target teacher skill development and track it. When we think about that, then we do want to take that one step back is how do we give coaches the skills they need to take teachers and then students to this place where we can really enact standards. I'm going to pause just a moment and ask you to put in the chat just a quick comment about what you've heard so far. I'm a big believer about beginning the way we mean to go on. I've tried to lay out just a little bit of why we're all here and some of what we're going to do together. So before I get into what coach certification looks like, let's just take a moment, pop something in the chat, a comment, a question, a wondering.
Hey Barb, this is Jeanette.
Hey Jeanette.
And I'm not able to chat because I'm on my way to Lexington for a KCTE conference. But I did want to make a comment though, because this is the time of year I think when I myself as a coach start getting in the doldrums a little bit, and so I really, really am excited about, and I already feel motivated with this concept in this group. So I'm really excited. That's all I wanted to say.
That's awesome. And we're seeing some other ones about systems change, learning by doing, by being excited. And I am too. And I think we're finding the timing. We've tried to do coach launches in the summer. And what we're finding is it's almost too late because you want to be starting to try out some of these new ideas or refreshed ideas in the summer with teachers. So this is going to be a brisk pace, but I think it's going to be really good because I never really thought about it at the coaching doldrums. Everyone's talking about testing. You've already done all this stuff, but we're finding that if we can get in late winter, early spring, it has a bigger impact for the next year. So I just love some of these comments. I'm going to pull us back to get nitty gritty about what you signed up for. You received a packet that lays out the work, but I'm a visual person. So when I say that we're enacting micro-credentialing or a competency-based system, over the next few months, the goal is for you to participate in virtual and asynchronous learning, and then you're going to be able to use that learning in different ways with teachers. And as you progress in your work, you're going to earn badges. Our goal is that everyone earns the task and ladder author badge, and that you begin to earn the certified task reviewer, certified ladder reviewer, expert task reviewer, expert ladder reviewer, and then that will lead the 7th badges. I've done all that. I'm a certified LDC coach. Most of you, if we keep on pace, will be able to earn that by July. Some of you who, if you've not had peer review yet, may need a little bit more time. But what I love about this, and I'm going to drill in just a minute, is that I got to tell you, I am like some of you, hey, this isn't our first rodeo. I've done a lot of different coaching credentials in my career, and some of them really were about seat time. I attended the Train the Trainer. Someone watched me present. I had good evaluations. The final LDC badge for a coach is this idea that my teachers, that at least 5 teachers I work with, can show that they can become task authors and develop strong curriculum also. And that's a badge that takes some time to earn. But I love this idea that if we really want to have an impact on students, we need to show evidence in our coaching. So when we think about what these badges mean, what you're saying is, I can help teachers develop specific skills myself. When I'm a task author, I'm showing that I understand the design principles of LDC, and then I'm going to be able to help teachers do that. I'm going to do that with a module. And then when we think about the certified task reviewer or module reviewer, those aspects of peer review, that means that I'm calibrated to national norms. So when I'm giving feedback, whether Kelly or Wayne gives feedback, it's going to be pretty close. Teachers are hearing the same message, and across the state, you're beginning to get this lift in assignment quality. And we know that the assignment on the kids' desks has a tremendous difference. The input that kids get in terms of assignment has a tremendous impact on output of what they can produce. So in a big picture kind of level, you're going to be earning these badges for the work you do. Those badges signify competencies to support teachers. It's like coaches are developing abilities so they can help teachers strengthen their abilities so we can help students. In a nutshell, what you're receiving is that you're starting the Blended Foundations course today. You'll have 2 other courses, Deep Dive 1 and Deep Dive 2. You will have multiple opportunities to submit to national peer review your work to get feedback so that you can revise. If you're already a trained peer reviewer, you'll be able to start earning calibration points on your own. If you need the peer review training, Robin and I are in cahoots. I'm not sure if Kelly Philbeck knows that yet, about bringing that to Kentucky, most likely early June, so that you would have that training. And again, the peer review training is all about calibrating to a curriculum alignment rubric so that you can give feedback to help teachers make their work good. We will have optional, starting in April, monthly workshop sessions where you can just jump on with people and workshop tasks. We very much believe in like a maker mindset around this work. And also through this process, you're going to begin to get access to analytics as you get teachers involved. And that's pretty powerful as well. I'm just going to pause a moment. I know that Kim is monitoring the chat. Since I'm in present mode, I'm not seeing it. But to see, before I drill down, if there's anything I've said that doesn't make sense or that you have questions about. Okay. Then again, I'm looking at this slide really as our roadmap. We've got a big picture of making a difference for kids in the state by building and investing in coaches like you, in leaders in the state, and this idea is that we're going to be able to network networks to support good instruction in the state. The packet that you received from Kelly Philbeck gives you the 6 to 12 month view of coach credentialing. You will have access to this PowerPoint, and we will show you where, so that you can also click and link. Blended Foundations is our first 7-week, almost like our now view. I'm going to pull out of this for a moment and just pull up the coach certification packet. Please make sure that if you have not reviewed this, that you do. It talks about how you'll progress from now through summer to become an LDC certified coach. What you'll see is a list of the experiences we're participating in, the badges and what they signify, and then the calendar. I think this calendar will be very important. I actually have this calendar printed and hanging on my whiteboard. So what we're doing right now is Blended Foundations. We're going to meet together once a week for about an hour on your own. It'll probably take you about an hour and a half to complete the work. If it's taking you more than that, talk to us. Because we might say to you, wait, don't watch every video. Just know that you have videos. You may need to skim and scan. The goal is that by April 14th, you submit, you've created a short module and you submit a task for feedback. That will be a new task. We're not going to dust off the old ones, because we find that in a lot of cases, the things that those of you who've been, like me, the oldest living Confederate widow of LDC, we weren't as aligned to standards in some of those days, and we tried to get them pretty big. So you can go back and workshop those old ones, but we're going to start fresh with something small. You can work in pairs to develop those tasks and modules, and we highly encourage that. So this is the now. If you have enough energy, cognitive energy, and time in these next 7 weeks, and you are already a trained peer reviewer, you can begin earning calibration points. Those of you who have not had peer review, you'll start that process later in the spring. To me, that extra independent learning of earning calibration points is when you have that cognitive space to do that. I think these first 7 weeks for most people will be pretty brisk. What we have is the drill down then. I mean, everything you need is here. Your calendar, a list of what each course looks like. If you are like, hey, I am one of those people ready to start calibration points. My kid's in college, not going to be home for spring break for a month. I can sit and do that, on my own. Right here on the last page, click on that, it gets you to calibration. So again, this is very detailed. We are not going to get this granular in every session, but I want to make sure that you have the complete information. The second thing that you have is a syllabus for this first 7 weeks. Every time we do a course together, you will have a little syllabus. This is a syllabus for Blended Foundations. It has our goals. It talks about that, just like I've said, some weekly assignments, some pre-work and post-work. We're going to be getting you into the LDC courses. We're going to learn by doing. And every week, we are going to provide you with resources and an agenda. This is just a nice anchor document for you that you will have. I use syllabuses from past courses when I plan presentations. So in a nutshell, I'm going to pull us back here. I just lost the presentation. I can't believe I just did that. Hang on 1 second. So if you would what have you heard that sounds exciting? What have you had that you're wondering about? If you could post that in the chat while I pull that PowerPoint back up. And I know Kimba is monitoring the chat if there are questions. So friends, in a nutshell, I keep saying in a nutshell this morning, I'm so sorry. It's better than We've got a big picture of improvement for kids. We're doing that through backwards design, and the piece in the pipeline we're at is coach. You have a 6-month plan, but know that some of you will need more than 6 months, and that's okay. We have our blended foundation syllabus for the next few weeks to get us started. And what we are going to do is just listed there. The end goal is that you will submit a task that you have developed, hopefully with another person. Many hands make light work. And that you're going to get feedback on that so that when you start the next virtual course, you're going to be able to build on that. Our goal is to get those first 2 badges through Blended Foundations Deep Dive 1 and Deep Dive 2. So that when teachers work with you, they know that you are able to walk the talk and that you have refined your skills in design so that you can give really great feedback. Before we move on, any questions in the chat? Any comments? All right. One thing I'd like to do just real briefly is this idea of, and you'll see me zipping out, big picture, granular. I mean, we've gone through a couple lines of the syllabus. What I'd like to do is just reframe LDC real briefly for you, like 5 minutes. And what I'd like to do is reframe LDC in terms of thinking about it as a curriculum alignment system. If we want to develop our teachers' ability to develop our students' ability to read complex text with intention and purpose, to write their own text, basically to acquire and disseminate knowledge, to create knowledge, how do we do that? Well, some of us were introduced to LDC initially when the framework was being developed as, hey, let's try these templates. Let's create a module or 2. Well, what LDC really has evolved to is more of a curriculum alignment system where, yes, creating curriculum or using and adapting curriculum is part of the process, but it's only part of it. Because if the work that we're doing is not situated in a larger context, what we have is modules running around like unruly children, and it's not really connected to anything. So what we're really looking at and trying to promote is using LDC for specific reasons in your system. I'm working with a school right now who's been talking about enacting the common core shifts for a long time, but has struggled to do that in a systematic way. So they're doing common assignments. That's no surprise to many of you in Kentucky. And they're building them for a specific purpose. So this is just a quick view of LDC as a curriculum alignment system, and I'd like to just show you a story of a school to bring that to life. What might that look like? And I would love to see in the chat, how is that the same as, or perhaps different than what you've experienced? Well, here's an example of a site that we work with in California. The principal, Terry, is thinking about, like, her big challenge is she's got a lot of mandates. Her school needs to improve performance of their ELL students, but they really have no plan. Instead, they've got 50 million things going on. So what she wanted to do was to begin to use LDC a little bit more systematically. What she did was thought about, rather than going, hey, we're going to make 3 modules a year or 5 mini tasks, or we're going to do this, she took a step back. And what she did was thought about LDC in terms of problem of practice. We're finding that this is a really useful framing for people, and you will leave this week with this handout. So what she did was she thought a little bit about where were her challenges? What could she specifically use LDC for? Well, she had, as an elementary school principal, she had assignments and activities everywhere, and they were very disconnected. She also had common planning time, but what was happening during that planning time was not very focused. and wasn't really building in a connected way. So what she wanted to use LDC for was really systems alignment. I've worked with schools who needed to build a base of instructional strategies or overall up the rigor. We can say that LDC can help with a lot of different things, but rather than trying to make LDC do everything for you, thinking a little bit about what problems of practice it could solve helps you target the work, and it helps you target the professional development for teachers. I'd like you to just take a moment and just chew on that and think about that as we're working. What Terry did then was she went to the LDC teacher competencies. She said, given that I want to work on alignment, what are the things my teachers need to get better at to help my students? And what she really realized was that we had all these activities and assignments rolling around, but they weren't really driven by standards. They might have had a whiff or a sniff of the standards, but they weren't tightly aligned. And not only that, teachers were grabbing from all over the place. From free websites, from published programs, and not really understanding how to evaluate the alignment to standards, much less create it. So she really decided, I'm not going to focus on everything. I'm going to A and in teacher competency 2A. These teacher competencies ground our LDC work. They align with Danielson, National Board Propositions, and many other frameworks. We've tagged the professional development so that you can choose professional development sequences that really help build these skills, and that's exactly what Tracy did. She decided to take a look at what they had already developed and what they had, and to do some curriculum mapping to begin with, so that she didn't have a whole lot of things flying around, but that we were using modules for a purpose. She used this template to do some curriculum mapping so that as a school, they had a focus on a few standards. Kids had massive practice. They used a common template and changed the content across disciplines. And that began to get her the alignment that she was looking for. We see other schools do this as well. Here's an example, and you have these in the PowerPoint, of mapping or situating the work by a standard. Here's how R3, my favorite standard, analyzing really is about change over time, looks vertically in ELA, social studies. Science, as Kelly knows, is a little bit more all over the place because it's more dependent on course. But the biggest thing was that where Tracy started was, what do I want LDC to do for me? It's not I'm doing LDC. What do I want this to do for me? How am I going to target a few specific teacher skills? What are we going to develop and for what purpose? And then they entered cycles of, are there pre-existing modules that we can adapt and use? What specifically do we need to develop to fill in the gaps? She engaged teachers in cycles of setting some goals for students, planning, teaching, assessing along the way, and then most important part, looking at student results and revising those plans, and that these things weren't one-offs, that instead, if you think about cycles, that teachers went from the red, here's why we're using LDC, to some strategic design to do this multiple times. So teachers engaged in about 3 instructional cycles in a year of using modules, looking at formative assessment, looking at student results, and revising. That really began to give the school system lift. So what Tracy really did, it says Terry here because we anonymized it. It's not that anonymous. A lot of people actually know Tracy. She set a work plan for the year. She really worked on with a certified LDC coach, protected time for teachers, used her data, engaged in the work like we're going to be doing with lots of face-to-face PLCs, virtual PLCs like we're doing today, using comments in core tools, using rubrics. And so she really did cycles and cycles throughout the year, and began to sell some great results. That was a really fast tour through this notion of when we think about LDC and when we speak about it, it's really not about modules or mini tasks. It's really more about how we want to get system level lift, and we can use LDC in specific ways to do that. I'd love to get your reaction to that as we start to switch gears. Either in the chat. Exactly. It should, and what Sheena's saying, it should look similar and should align with what you're doing. I'm going to switch gears now to look at the tools that you are going to be using and start to get you into them. Expect to play around, to sometimes feel clumsy or novice, and other times feel like, whew, I've got that nailed, because we're using different systems. What we're doing in this blended work together is we're using Zoom so that we can have a synchronous conversation. You could be using Skype, Google Hangout, whatever, but the idea that you have some synchronous work, either face-to-face or virtually, is really valuable. We're going to use Teach Teams as a place to have a discussion thread and host some organizational things. You might be using Canvas, Schoology, other kinds of things. As much as possible, we try to situate the work in core tools, but we do know that we need some of these other pieces. You'll be doing work in the Learn tab in core tools. I'm going to pull this up so that you can see it. When we look at core tools, you all have access through this work to a wonderful tab called the Learn tab. Your coursework is going to sit in here. The peer review work that we do is here, as well as analytics that you'll eventually be using, and specific coach tools that eventually you'll be using. You'll be able to have what we call group management. So we are going to be using the Learn tab today. You're already in Zoom, and what I want to do is turn your attention to Teach Teams. What I'm going to ask you to do is to open a browser and to go into the teaching channel.
And just a reminder, to help you transition into the teaching channel, if you're not familiar with Zoom, you can hit the escape button, and that'll help you exit the full screen mode, so that way you can have your other windows open and be kind of navigating back and forth between them. If for some reason you have any trouble with your escape key, you can just kind of hover your cursor over the top of the screen, and you'll get a little bar that says View Options or More Options, and you click on that. And in the drop-down menu, it'll say Exit Full Screen. If you click on that, then you can access the other windows on your computer while you're online with Zoom and while somebody's sharing the screen.
The other thing I do sometimes, Kimba, is I open a second browser.
That's a great way to do it too.
So what we are going to ask you to do right now is to do just a little bit of work to dip in to Teach Teams. I'm going to ask you to log in, and you should see that you are in the LDC Blended Foundations group. You're going to see something called a learning plan. So what I'd like to do is make sure that everybody can log in. If you can't or are having difficulty logging in, please put that in the chat, and Kimball will help get you situated. What you should see is that you have learning plan steps. It's going to be our weekly agenda. We have this week and next week, and then we'll add the others after that. When I click on week 1 orientation, that's going to open up for me. And what you're going to see is our learning goals for this week. We did a little bit of the why and the how. And what we've asked you to do before this was to do some tutorials. After today, I think you'll have a better sense too about whether you want to dip into some of those tutorials. You'll see that the next step will be to complete week 2 coursework, and we'll review that at the end. And then you'll see links to resources, the PowerPoint that I'm using, the syllabus, the Analyze Standards demo that we'll use in a moment, the problems of practice. And what I've done here is I've created a post. What I'd like you to do is practice, and I've already, it's just to quickly practice by saying, what's a goal for yourself as part of this work? Based on what you've been hearing and what you're thinking about, what's a goal that you have? So let's just take a moment. We're all going to do some work. And as these sessions start to go on, this is the most talking that you will ever receive, thank goodness, is in this first session. As these sessions go on, more and more, they're discussions and work sessions. So please take a moment, and everybody, please add your comment and post.
And I just want to point out, as you see Barb posting, there's 2 ways that you can post, as an original post or as a reply. And so you'll be using these features each week. So just like in a Facebook thread or any other kind of discussion forum, just pay attention to those areas. And if you're having any trouble logging in, just let me know and I'll give you a hand. If you get that request permission option, if you just send that, I'll go ahead and accept it as soon as possible. But it looks like most of you are in. So far I see Kate, Kim, Jeanette, Cindy, Sheena, Dana, Kelly Stidham, Amy Hill, Mike York, Wayne, Stacy, Kelly Philbeck. But the others I have not seen join the group yet, so please let me know what I can do to help.
Can you give a link to log in the chat?
Sure will.
And folks, I will say, as you were doing this, we wanted to pause, give you a chance to do this while there was support, so that then we're in good shape to go on. Anytime you do this virtual work, we find is really worth the investment of time, but it does take a little bit to set up, to get good norms going, and to make sure everybody can just work the systems. Long term, we're just seeing so many benefits because, especially in rural areas, people are losing way too much time out of their classrooms and even out of their school building to work together. We also find that sometimes putting things in writing really clarifies our thinking, that our feedback is more precise, and that we can do some different kinds of things with video that we could not do before. But there will be some growing pains as we all get in and do this. So one, as a learner, you're experiencing them too, but as a leader, you are also thinking about, how do I help people work through those humps, feel welcome, not feel foolish, like, wait, I should know how to do this. You want people to feel comfortable, but you want to make sure you get them using tools. As we're wrapping that up, we wanted to make sure that everybody has the ability by the end of today to get in the teaching channel and to post a goal for themselves. One is to get you thinking about that, but 2 was really to get you into the technology a little bit and to work out some of those kinks before you go off on your own next week. We can also help you today. Please feel free to shoot any emails or to let us know between now and next week. What I'm going to do is, in our final 16 or so minutes, to take us into a little bit of work and then talk about next steps. What I want to stress is, moving forward, that the rest of our sessions will be more work-based sessions. We wanted to make sure that you had everything you needed setup-wise today. What we've tried to do is situate the LDC work in a backwards design or a larger perspective. From standards to students to teachers to coaches, you're working with school leaders and you're thinking more about bigger networks. It all really does begin with the skills we want teachers to build through the teacher competencies and outputs from students. One of the biggest things we see teachers struggle with, and why we focus on this early on in the professional development, is this idea of analyzing assignments aligned to standards. One thing that we are finding has been really revolutionary is this idea of a focused standards cluster. Some of our early LDC modules, I've seen modules of 30 or 50 standards, and we know that that promotes coverage rather than deeper learning. What we see is when we work with a reading, writing, and content standard as a triad, that the standards support each other and really drive deeper thinking and student engagement. They make the assignment much more standards driven. I'd like to get you in to an example of that. One of the things we're going to be doing in the work together is we're going to use the Learn tab in Core Tools. One thing that we will write directions for you quite a bit as, if you look at the top here, says Learn, then go to Analyze Standards Demo, then go to Competency 1A, then go to Standards in Student Writing. What we'll do is we'll list directions like that so that you have them, but we'll always model. What we're going to be doing is taking a look at this, how focused standards work, and how that relates to the teaching task and the student output. One thing you're going to see is that this is an ELA example, which means that there are two reading standards because the content areas is ELA. So one standard is more literacy-based and one standard is more geared to the content of ELA. I'm going to go ahead and take us in the Learn tab to this spot. I'm going to ask you to play along with me. What you're going to want to do is hit Escape, or wherever you are, like with the Teaching Channel browser, with the Teaching Channel, you could click on Analyze Standards Demo right from the Teaching Channel, or you can go to Core Tools, click on Learn, and click on Analyze Standards Demo. It's going to take a moment for you to process that and go there. You can go to Learn in Core Tools, click Analyze Standards Demo, and then I'm going to click Standards in Student Writing. I'm looking for you to do the same. So everybody is clicking on Learn, Analyze Standards Demo, Competency 1A, which takes you to this screen, Standards in Student Writing. All right. What I'm going to see is one small chunk of PD that I could use in about a 30 or 40 minute segment. I am going to ask you right now to click here to access the steps of the activity. So you're going to click the blue bar, and then you're going to click the Art of Persuasion. And what I'm seeing now is everybody who's there. I can see that at the top. That's a nice thing for you as coaches. LDC functions, the Core Tools functions very much like a Google Doc-like environment, so I can see everybody's there. What I'm going to ask you to do is to think with me for a moment about this task and the focus standards. take a look and read the task. Where do you see the language of the focus standards in the task itself? Take a moment and put that in the chat. What you're really doing is reading and saying to yourself over here, step number 3, what's the task asking students to think about? Do you see the language of the focus standards? Does anybody want to make any comments? Okay. One of the things that I notice, and when I'm doing this with groups of people, I can click open the art of persuasion. One of the things I notice is that students are expected to analyze evidence about the author's use of rhetorical devices. I see it right up here. Utilize persuasive techniques, analyze the rhetorical devices. And that they're doing this is an informational task. They're doing this not to write an argument, but to analyze the way that King uses those rhetorical devices to support an argument. So the thinking work the kids are supposed to do is analyzing the rhetorical devices in support of the author's argument. It's tightly focused. What I should see then, if this is truly standards driven, I'm seeing the link between the standards and the tasks, that's step 1. But then what I should see is in the student work that there is a connection and that this thinking work is evident right there in the task. What I'd like you to do now is to go down here to the first paper under what results, rhetorical devices sample. I'd like you to click that. And you're going to find that it's going to download for you. What I'd like you to see here is that we have the task at the top and then the standards. I've taken 2 colors. And what I've done is I've looked at, wait a second, RI5 is all about structure. But in that standard, there's analysis. When I look at RI1, there's analysis. So anytime I see analysis in the paper, I'm going to color that yellow. Also, when I look at the standards and how the standards work together, both standards call for citing evidence. Anytime I see citing evidence, I'm going to color code that green. You can color code it whatever you want, but what I'd like you to do is to take a look at the first page or 2 and find 2 pieces of evidence, 1 for analysis and 1 for citing evidence. I'd like you to take a moment and do that right now. I'm going to use green for my cite. And I'm going to use yellow. So I'm looking for analysis. I'm asking you to try this on your own just to get a taste of it. When I think about this, folks, what I'm really thinking about is how I'm looking for the evidence and the absence of a certain kind of thinking in the student work. I'm looking to see what the students were able to, how the students were able to apply the standards. I saw that there too. And also how those ideas work together. One of the things I see in Pennsylvania a lot is citing, kids just pulling out quotes, but no analysis. And not for a specific purpose. one of the things we'll see that, oh, there's a good one, Kate. When we think about what is the kind of work we want from our students, how to really get that deep analysis and application.
I just want to add in, Barb, that in New York, we had all of our teachers go through this exercise, and so many of them said that they're going to bring it back and do it with their kids. So their kids will actually code their own work for evidence of the standards. And they found that really revolutionary with their instruction, because now kids are really focusing on, do I understand these standards?
That's a great point. And, what we're really talking about is this idea of alignment. Does the input match the output? Not as an event that we do once in a while when we pull down, maybe it's one stellar lesson or unit in Florida, to talk about what is the student work. Lots of examples, all ELA, all the way down to kindergarten, to try and play around with over the next week. And also, I really just wanted to give you a taste of things to come, that we're going to be doing this kind of work together. Really, what I'm hoping to do is to give you both an experience that deepens your content knowledge with tons of things that you can use as a leader as you move forward. Very briefly, we want to talk about next steps between now and next week. There's some work on your own to do to prepare for next week. So I'm sure that you'll have things you'll want to revisit from this week. I'm going to click back to Blended Foundations up here as I'm navigating the learning plan. You'll have things that you want to think about and dig further into, because this has been a very quick tour. For next week, there's some pre-work that we want you to do. So please click into week 2, and you will see there's some asynchronous work prior to our get-together that you need to do. We're going to ask you to review some key learning content from the courses, and we're going to ask you to post and respond by next Thursday. Kimba, do you want to elaborate on that, or should I pull up some of this course content?
No, I can elaborate on it. So the asynchronous work is a lot of your learner hat, and so it's your chance to really dig into the content. But we have really specific pathways for you to think about going through that Learn tab, because once you enter Learn tab and construct a task, blocks 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4, there's a lot of information there. And so what you'll want to do is just go to these sections that we've identified here to guide your learning. Obviously, read more if you would like. There's no need to do the reflections or even view extra stuff if you just don't have time to. However, it's always there for you to go back to and dig into more deeply as you need to or see fit.
You're going to see 3 numbered steps to take before we get together next week. Those steps are nicely also listed here for yourself as a little checklist with the detailed version right here. So you'll be going into some of the course content, and as Kimba says, it's really dipping into some specific sections, not the whole thing. You're going to post one aha or critical moment based on the coursework that you read and see. You're going to post one question you have about the content. You're going to respond to somebody. And in that course content, you're going to be asked to start a short module.
And each week, you'll have those same 3 recurring steps. So aside from our PLC time, you'll be building and designing a task and pieces of your ladder. We have some tools and resources that we'll talk about next week that we'd like you to try and play around with. And that's part of why we're asking you to just begin a new task and not return to one that you've used before. And during our synchronous time each week in that PLC, it'll be rich discussion to apply the resources and the thinking that you've engaged in over the last week to each other's tasks, and really practice that feedback of your leader hat.
Mm-hmm. So we are just a couple minutes over time. We want to thank you for a really packed week. You may have lots of individual questions in these first couple weeks. Please feel free to email us, Kimba at ldc.org or Barb at ldc.org. We will get ourselves into a groove as these things start to feel second nature, but a little work on your own, and then a little work together each week. At the end of the day, we are just super excited about being your partners in Kentucky. For us, a couple reminders is it's not really about LDC. It's about making things better for kids. We believe that you are, it's probably not a good time to talk about viruses, but you are the people who reach batches and batches of other people. And so this investment that the state is making in your work has tremendous spread ability, and that's part of the IT grant. We hope that you're leaving with this idea that LDC is a system. We're going to use it flexibly, and we're going to be playing around and figuring things out. Not a train the trainer. It's a place where we're going to just do real work every week, figure things out together. We'll have our struggles, and we'll have our high five moments. The recording is finished. Our session is finished. Kim and I are going to stay around for a little bit in case somebody has questions or wants to talk a little bit more. You're like, hey, wait a minute. You went too fast on that. Show me that again. Or I'm wondering about X. I certainly, again, would love to see any parting comments in the chat. Like, hopefully you had a good, Mike used the word, I believe, productive struggle. I hope that you are leaving, stretched between the ears, but also know that we will work through this all together. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Can't wait for the rest of our weeks.